week, Sheepdog. And we're going to kick off a conversation with both of them. Hopefully, those that did get an opportunity to watch the movie over the last weekend because you were able to get a free voucher from us that was delivered from the team. Hopefully, you guys were able to watch that and connect with the stories that were in that movie. And I want you guys to bring your questions. I want a full buy-in here, guys. Lean into this. If you guys are interested in getting into the industry, even obviously we've got a number of individuals. Tom himself has been in the industry for a long time, as well as Stephen and Matt. So bring your questions. We'll get started here in just a moment with them. Tom, when we get started, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna spotlight all three of you when I do my introductions.
Well, thank you.
Oh, that must be Stephen.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Stephen, how you doing?
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
It's really good to meet you on here, and thank you. Honestly, thank you.
Well, thank you. I appreciate y'all for joining us. I'm just typing in my name here. Let's see.
And
Is that what it's for?
I'm on the lookout for. Oh, there's Matt right there. I'm gonna highlight him as well. Not a spotlight. Hey, Matt, how you doing? Thanks for joining us.
Good. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, there I see. So- Cool. Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, it looks like we're all here. It looks like everybody's spotlighted here. And I'm going to kick things off. Again, thank you so much for joining us, Stephen, Matt, and Tom. Special thanks to you as well. And everybody here that is on the call, our transitioning service members, veterans, and military spouses, if we have them out there, thank you so much for being here. Obviously, for all of you, we were able to have the privilege of screening Sheepdog last week to you guys here in our academy. And now we have the pleasure of speaking to the team behind the story and team behind the movie itself. And oftentimes when we look at stories and we see movies out there, we get one perspective of the action or the chaos of war. And oftentimes we don't get to explore, for some of us, the other side, the picking up the pieces of our own lives after we get back from service and reconnecting with family. And I think that Sheepdog does an incredible job telling the story of that reintegration, of the post-traumatic growth after the war, after service. So joining us today, we have Stephen Graham. He was a writer, director, producer, and star of Sheepdog. He has been several years developing this story, and we're going to dive into more of that and where that came from, and that long journey of research, diving in and listening to the stories of the veterans that really made an impact and the inspiration behind this story of Sheepdog. And then joining him is Matt Dallas, also star of the movie Sheepdog, producer, and some of you may know him and recognize him from his time as Kyle XY, who became a key creative partner and joining into this journey, and actually met Stephen back in 2011 on working on a Western, right?
Yep.
So we're going to go back in time a little bit and ask about that and how you guys met and along this journey. But I do want to, before we begin in questions, I do want to shout out and a special thank you to Tom, because none of this would have ever happened without Tom here and connecting us with Stephen and Matt and the production team. And so, Tom, thank you so much. I mean, 40-year career in film industry, including serving as vice president at Blockbuster Entertainment. And again, obviously, your relationship with Jordy Kern, obviously that connection that you guys have to bring this story to us. So I appreciate what you've done and being able to watch this amazing movie.
It's certainly my pleasure, Matt. And hi, Stephen. Hi, Matt, and everyone. Uh, I have to tell you, I found the film to be extraordinary and very compelling. And Stephen, your labor of love that over 14 years bringing this film to market is truly impressive. As Matt has said, I've been in home entertainment for over 40 years, and a long, long time ago, I was VP of purchasing at Blockbuster when they had 4,500 stores. If you remember going into their stores at that time, going to the new release wall, you would see that the A titles had a row of 8 facings. And we also did that for independent films that were important. And I've seen a lot of movies over my career. I can assure you that if that film came out at that time, we would have made it an 8 average per store in every store. And again, oh yeah, it was that. It was. I'm sorry about the barking dog. It was that important a film, and
Wow.
just kudos and props to you for bringing this important film to market. And it's my honor to be able to help bring it to the veteran community at Seven Eagle Group.
Well, I gotta say thank you so much, Tom. And I'm with Kyle Crook. Let's bring Blockbuster back.
100%. Yeah, let's go.
Heck yeah, those were some of the best memories walking the aisles and discovering a film that didn't even know you were looking for. You'd come across in those indie films, and thank you, that means the world to us. I think Matt and I are going to have to make a time machine and see what we can do to get back to those days. Thank you so much. It means the world. And I just want to say quickly too, just for everybody that's on, it means the world to Matt and I, and we're very humbled and grateful to engage with you all to hear your questions. And just know we're an open book on this entire 15-year journey. So any questions that anybody has, whatever it is, we're happy to share and go down that. But Tom, God bless you, and thank you. And Matt,
Thank you so
Matt
much.
Olson, thank you so
Certainly
much.
my pleasure and honor.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Well, thank you guys. I want to give just a moment to you guys. Obviously, I did a brief introduction, but that was probably pales in comparison to what you guys have accomplished too. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into some of these questions that I have about the film itself, about your guys' journey to bring it to the screen, and the conversation that really kind of inspired your main character, Stephen, and also Matt, and the discovery of how to reconnect with family after service. But I want to give you a moment of time to also introduce yourselves as well, and kind of for those that aren't aware of the films that you've been a part of. But yeah, I want to give some time to you guys to introduce yourselves to our amazing crew here at Seven Eagle Academy.
All right, Matt, you want me to dive in?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, on a cold winter's morning, I am back, and no, I'm joking. So, I, I'll just give you sort of a brief background. As a child, I, discovered my parents' home camcorder. I played around with it a lot. I made my own videos. I developed characters, partly wrestling characters from the WWF back when it was WWF, and just experimented. It's how I fell in love with storytelling and movies. As I said to Tom, I spent many an hour wandering the aisles of Blockbuster, and but formally, I went to theater school in England. I discovered Shakespeare, fell in love. At that point I was pre-med. I was going to go pre-med. I dropped out of university to fulfill my passion and to see if this thing could be something that was really that I was gravitating towards. Started making short films, got more into acting, and I mean, I don't want to have to rhyme off my resume. Some people on this panel might recognize me from White Chicks, which was became like a cult classic sort of comedy with the Wayans brothers. I've worked on stage with Al Pacino, Jessica Chastain. I've done films with John Voight, Jeff Daniels, Netflix series, all the crime dramas like CSI and Cold Case and that sort of thing. And then Sheepdog, as you'll start to hear our mine and Matt's story, really took over our lives. We never took our foot off the gas pedal, and so I'd stepped away from essentially from acting to focus on this really quickly to lead into segue into Matt. So yes, I met Matt on a Western. It was a low budget Western shooting on the Paramount Ranch before it burnt down. This was in 2011. And it was a project that we were all us young guys were lured to because Val Kilmer was on the docket and he was playing Wyatt Earp. So we were all like, yeah, we gotta. So they paid us nothing. We worked it out, and it was like minus $15 a day is what we were making once you factored in the gas to drive to the Paramount Ranch. And we learned that Val Kilmer was in the flashbacks or the present day scenes or whatever it was, but we were never going to get to work with him. But it was this extraordinary experience where we got to spend most of the shoot on our horses, and it was just remarkable. It was a great bunch of guys. I met Matt, and I will share the genesis of Sheepdog, but I'll wait to how that all tied into meeting Matt. So Matt, take the floor, brother.
Yeah, so I got my start when I was younger. I was like, I grew up in Phoenix and I was the kid that was like chasing butterflies in right field in baseball when my dad was yelling at me to pay attention to where the ball was. So that's when my grandma took me to audition for a play, and then theater was like I found my love. But it was a very full circle moment because now my son plays baseball and I've completely fallen in love with baseball. And now I'm not chasing butterflies anymore. I'm running drills with my kid. But yeah, so I moved to Los Angeles when I was 18, just coming from the theater world. And I booked my first show, as Matt said, Kyle XY, and sort of started working in film and television through that. And then, yeah, met Steven in 2011 on our Western. And we were kind of sharing a trailer. It was pretty low budget. So we had like it was a trailer with like a little divider in between, but you could like hear each other breathing through the walls. So it was basically, we were sharing a room. So we would just open it up, and we got pretty close, came to know each other through that. And then, yeah, he came to me one day and like he said, he'll get into the genesis, but he came to me with an idea for a project and said, pack up, we're going on the road for 3 months. And that's where this all began.
Wow. Yeah, no, thank you so much for the introduction, guys. Like I said, it's an honor to have you guys here and talk about this story through Sheepdog. And again, thank you also for providing some insights on the struggler actor, transition process and going through those because, minus $15 a day, that's not great. But hey, getting your foot in the door. And you said something earlier, Stephen, about pursuing your passion. And I kind of want to start there, right? Because oftentimes with our transitioning service members on this call and those that are finding their way into their next career after the military. How important was that to your journey to where you are now is actually pursuing your passion in film?
Wow, it's such a great question. So I would say to anybody right now that the biggest thing that I learned was like you have to know your why. And even what your passion might be might not actually be what you have a talent for. And a talent can be developed, there's no question. I mean, it takes time to find your voice. But no, I found from I had this experience. So I went to theater school. I played Hamlet, and I did that in England. I came back to I was living in Vancouver, Canada at the time, and I did Hamlet there. And I was booking acting gigs. I went out and got an agent and just took a whack at it, and I was very fortunate, and I booked work. And then I believe there was like a strike 2 years into my time living there, and there was just nothing going on. And so I was able to put together, I wrote a story based on my grandfather being a POW in the Second World War, and I shot it black and white on film and just pulled out every favor with a non-union crew, and went and shot this on this pre-World War II farm, an hour and a half out of Vancouver, and I had just done a mini series for Steven Spielberg, and they had Nazi uniforms, so I was able to actually use those uniforms, and it took place on a labor camp, and it was just a 22-minute film, like I said, black and white, shot in German. I learned Polish to play my grandfather because he was a Polish farmer that was held captive by the Nazis. And I fell in love. That was when I really fell in love with the art. It was very stressful, but I was just so proud of what we were able to accomplish and working with a team. And I loved the collaborative process that, I remember going over to my costume designer's house at like I had to drop her off fabric, and I remember her mother answering the door, and she was in the kitchen underneath the sewing machine, sewing the Star of David and then the Polish triangle on the children's clothing. And there was just this moment of like this thing that was much bigger than any of us, that we were the story that we were about to go and tell. So that was really my passion. And then And then I that film took me down to, I was nominated for a Hollywood Film Award, and that was at the Hollywood Film Festival. And why that's important to share was because I just wanted people to see the film, and here it was shot on film. It played at the ArcLight Cinemas, which recently closed post-COVID in Hollywood. But I had this wild experience that weekend of just how the film was received in a theater, and I remember meeting Tom Hanks and Tom Cruise and going to the award ceremony and being in a category with a guy from Pixar, and everybody thought my agent was the filmmaker because I was the 20-year-old, filmmaker. And that's what brought me to Los Angeles. And I for years pounded the pavement. I was very fortunate as an actor to be a part of a lot of projects. But I will say that my first love was filmmaking and was storytelling. And I was very fortunate that my acting career had taken the front seat, but had yearned to get back to it. And as we get into the genesis of the project, we never thought this was going to take 15 years. We thought maybe 2 or 3 from its beginning, but that was my journey, and that was certainly my passion. And the passion is so important because there will be many days you want to quit. There'll be many days that you are questioning everything and your own pursuit, and looking at other things as people do, other paths, career paths, and I think it's really important to follow your heart, because that's what you're going to be willing to work day and night on and give your all to.
Yeah, no, absolutely, 100%. I couldn't agree with you more. Finding your true kind of your North Star, what guides you, finding out why do you wake up every morning? And if you can do something that is a passion of yours long term, it no longer becomes a job. And I'm sure you feel the same way doing what you guys do today. But Matt, I want to go back, right, to 2011, right, when Stephen and you guys first met, and this conversation that really kind of led to this trajectory over the last 15 years to create this story, and bring together the voices of those that are voiceless,
Mm.
right? Can you take us back to that moment when Stephen brought this idea to go on this trip across the country, interviewing veterans, finding their story, and then piecing this all together?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of give like the genesis of Steven's idea, and I mean, he's probably better to tell like where the story came from, but he had an experience with a tow truck driver, um, that his car had broken down 3 hours outside of LA. Yes, Stephen. And he
Yeah.
had,
Want me just to tell it really
I
quickly, and
feel
then
like,
I'll,
yeah, he
yeah.
should tell that because that
Yeah.
really is the genesis. Yeah.
So just really in brevity, I was shooting a film in Vancouver, and I was living in LA, and I drove through the night. So it was 21 hours into a 24-hour drive back. My car broke down 3 hours north of the city. I called AAA, and the local tow truck driver that they sent out was like, saddle up, partner. We got a long haul into town. And during that drive, he began to open up about his life, the challenges in his marriage, being a father of 3, his financial hardship. And then he began to share all the different medications that he was on that were tethered to his traumatic brain injury, his post-traumatic stress from his service, from multiple deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. And I don't think I said 3 words on that ride. I just listened. And throughout it, he just kept saying, I can't believe I'm telling you this. I've never told anybody this. I've never told my wife, therapist. I get back to LA, and I thanked him for getting me home safe. And I looked into his eyes, and you know, I was certain he had no interest to see me again. And that made sense to me because he had just shared something with somebody, and that was enough. And that was the seminal moment for me. That lit the spark. It wasn't just a sense of curiosity, it felt like a sense of responsibility. And a month later, I signed on to do this Western, and I met Matt. And it was several weeks into that experience, like doing the film, where I shared that tow truck driver experience with Matt. And I explained to Matt, and Matt, you can give all the gritty details, but I said to Matt, I don't know that this is a screenplay. I don't know what it is. I'm journaling, but I need to go out on the road this summer, and I gotta find the truth. Are there more men and women that are suffering in silence like this tow truck driver? And if they are, we have to give them a voice. Because how could somebody who served their country honorably feel so disconnected from their community, from their family, from their battle brothers and sisters? And so I said to Matt, if it's a screenplay, I want you to play my best friend. But the caveat is you got to go out on the road with me because you got to see it for yourself, whatever we're going to see. And that was sort of,
Yeah, so he came to me with that, and for me at that point, like I don't really come from a military family, other than my grandfather had served in the Navy, but it was never something he spoke much about. So I like I was like, yeah, this sounds like something that's very important, and I would love to be a part of it and part of creating a project, from the ground up. And it's something that you don't get to do much, especially as an actor. You come on so late in the process. Um, so we got to work, and we spent months putting together, sort of like trying to put together a plan, trying to figure out a roadmap. We got Toyota of Santa Monica to give us a Prius to go out on the road. They decked it out with flags and everything and sent us out. But even like we had like a big map of the country out there, and like trying to like map out where we thought we'd go and who would trying to find people to talk with us. But as you can imagine, it was not easy to find veterans to that would be willing to share their stories with us, because who were we other than just two guys from Hollywood? So we had a very empty looking map in the beginning, but we didn't let that stop us. We packed our Prius full. We didn't really have an end date in mind, other than we just had the summer ahead of us, and so we did, and we got on the road. And the first veteran that we met with was Staff Sergeant George Rice in Texas, Southern Texas. So we went down there, and uh, it was interesting because, we rolled out so kind of pretty naive, like we had cameras and we thought we were going to document the whole thing, like felt like, documentary filmmakers almost, like we were out to like find the truth. So we'd set up the cameras and we'd do the interview, but it was really when the cameras turned off that the real stories and the were shared with us. Um, and that experience, I mean, again, like Stephen can share more about that particular experience, but that definitely like was the snowball for us, or began the snowball for us, that it like that's where he was able to vouch for us and introduced us to, somebody else. And then from there, we were able to work our way into every nook and cranny of this country. And really, we would sit down with anybody that would talk to us that had sort of an experience in this world. And so whether it be Gold Star family members or veterans or mental health workers, we were just, open to hearing anybody's stories that they would share with us.
No, I appreciate that. So I got a question for you, because obviously at the start of this, right, sparked by that one interaction with the tow truck driver telling his story to you on this drive, this sparked this, I guess, in a sense, this curiosity to find out more about the lives of those that served our country and stuff like that. Did you know from the onset, Matt, you just said it, you felt like documentary, like filmmakers and stuff like that. At what point through this journey and through the conversations did you say, there's so many stories that we can tie into the character of Daryl, and showcase some of these things and actually truly put this to screen, and show everybody what's really behind the scenes, the after effects of war that many stories don't tell? At what
Yeah.
point did that come alive?
Yeah, well, I think also part of kind of I left out there is, like when we after that first conversation in Texas with George Rice, there was certainly a moment where again, Stephen can share, but George Rice took off his in memoriam band and handed it to Stephen and was like, "These are the men." Well, actually, you tell this story, Stephen.
no, you're good, man.
But he handed it to Steven and says, "I want you to have this." And Steven was like, "Of course, like no, I can't accept that." And he said, "Don't let me down." And he insisted that Steven take it. And so we got in the car that evening, and it was definitely the moment of, wow, we've bitten off more than we can chew. This is so we can either pack up and go back to LA, or we can keep pushing forward. And we did, and we kept pushing forward. But it was like over that summer of collecting all of those stories, it was certainly we did have that moment of, wow, there is so much here. And there are, in fact, like Steven said, so many people that are experiencing the same thing that truck driver was experiencing. And more. There's so many more stories. And that's also, I think, when it started to become clear, when we got back and we started talking about what the story was going to be, it became clear that it was going to be more than even just following one veteran, that it really was going to be, the ecosystem around the veteran and everybody that's affected. And everybody's trauma is unique, right? What one person's trauma might look like is going to look very different to somebody else. So it couldn't even just be one person's story. So it's the families, the spouses, the parents, the mental health professionals. It's sort of like everybody that's touched and affected by this. And so I think, yeah, as we started to like pull all those stories together, it became clear, the direction or like the stories we needed to tell.
And I think it's worth adding too, is like from that experience in McAllen, Texas with George, the three men that were on his in memoriam band, he wanted us to go meet with their families. Or the guys in his unit that were affected by, and that was what loosely inspired the sheepdog monologue that my character has in the film. So, we proceeded on throughout the country, every nook and cranny. We met with, Gold Star families, folks that had nothing related to do with the sheep pen incident and mission, but all over the place. But it was interesting because we walked into the Detroit VA and we're like, hey, we just want to talk to people here. And bless Lisa Onley is her name, who was the head of it at the time, and she took a chance on us. I think she saw our earnestness, and God bless her because I would go back and forth for years there. I turned like an old custodian's office into my office, or an old custodian's room with the mop and everything, with the bleach and everything. I'm in there like on my computer, and they would let me role play with doctors and sit in on PTS orientation classes, and it was really informative. And that's what informed so much of Virginia Madsen's character, and then certainly with Vondi Curtis Hall's character playing a Vietnam veteran. I did honor flight for years out of Austin, Texas, where you take our respective um, World War II Vietnam veterans to their respective memorials in DC, and you spend a weekend together. It's very intimate and it's very sobering, when you go down to say, the Vietnam Wall. And then if you're so lucky to be welcomed to the hotel lobby bar that night for a whiskey, that's where all the stories come out. And that informed a lot of his dialogue. And so, I think when we pulled in all the stories, it kind of over the years, it's important to share too that Matt and I weren't married to playing the parts, right? There were times where we're like, well, if we stepped aside, would it make this journey easier? And I think our concern was always like, we didn't want typically an actor gets a script and you're filming 3 weeks later, right? So it's not like Daniel Day-Lewis spends a year on Lincoln, which was to the dismay of Steven Spielberg, who didn't want to wait a year. And because that's a luxury, right? So we were concerned that, well, is such and such big movie star going to come in and just give their interpretation of what it is, whereas we knew what it was. We had sat for hundreds of hours, and because it's not just sitting across a table from somebody in an office, it's being in their living rooms. I mean, at one point I lived with a veteran in Pittsburgh. I lived in his sister's attic, and I spent a month with him and just absorbing all like the family dynamic, the military spouse, how the ripple effect of it all. And there was many stories like that. And that's how we were able to inform even the dialogue for Lily Cooper's character, who plays my estranged wife in the film.
Yeah, well, that was I tell you one of the parts of the film that really really got me was that interaction, the honesty that she portrayed outward towards you, right? And just the frustration and the agony that she was dealing with really, I think, really kind of elevated the whole situation and really brought everything into focus about it's not just about the main character. It's not just about Daryl. It's a whole community, it's a whole family thing that people go through and struggle. And you have to find an outlet, you have to find a way to reconnect. And through your journey, through your conversations, and I know, from talking with veterans myself, it is tough to get stories, especially for those that have been a veteran for a while or have seen combat, intensive combat. It's very tough to share stories. and share their experience. How did you approach those conversations with those veterans to then actually tie them into your story in Sheepdog?
I would say out of the gate, trust.
Yeah,
I mean, Matt and I will die with those stories. We will take them to our grave, they'll never ever be shared. I mean, what's in the movie, obviously, is loosely inspired by all the different stories, but there's so many things that have been shared with us that we had to know that the veteran that we were sitting in front of or veterans knew that they could trust us. That it's
yeah,
almost like for lack of a better term, like a patient doctor relationship where whatever is spoken is never spoken again,
yeah,
sort of thing. That's number one, I think. And I think that we were able, it took time, but we built that trust. And that's where you're going to get, like, in the film, it was important to share, with trauma, the dark and quiet places. Well, you're only going to get that level of nuance if you can kind of become a fly on the wall or just sort of disappear where someone doesn't feel challenged by, hey, so tell me this, hey, tell me that. It's really spending like what you can learn, even going like spending time with Gold Star families and just having dinner together at their dining table, right? And what you can learn in the conversations and the dynamic from it. So, that's what we were able to do. And I've said this before, but the script, just getting back to the original draft was 2012, and I had written three deployments in there in the original draft, and I refined them over the years, and as our budget shrunk on us, we had already had multiple false starts with different actors at the time, a different script almost. And when it was like 2022, we started casting again. Matt and I knew that it would take years if it fell apart again, because it does to put all the pieces back. One piece of financing falls out, it could take you years to find it, and then everybody else loses their nerve, and then you're doing it all over again with a totally different cast. So I say that because when the budget shrunk, it was a matter of cutting the deployments. And one of our good friends was the executive producer on Lone Survivor, and he had worked with us on this to help shepherd it for years. And he said, if there's any advice, Stephen, I can give you and Matt, is if you get to a point where you don't have the financing to shoot the deployments, don't shoot them. He said, it doesn't matter how good your drama is in the present day stuff. If you blow it on that, you'll never be forgiven by the veteran community. And so I made that decision, but I will share that it wasn't a loss. I think to be honest, it made the film better to not have it because it kept the audience in the film. But I also have to say that those stories lived within us. Those deployments that I wrote out, I didn't just invent them. They were based on like helmet cam footage that I saw or military operations. I was actually going to show you the sheep pen and the crack in the wall and the whole thing. So by the time I got to that monologue, I did that in one take. It lived in my nightmares, it was in me. And that was very similar for Matt in the scene that he goes into the pawn shop.
yeah,
And the way when he stepped in front of the camera, I looked at it, it was like a totally different person. It was not my friend that I had gone on the road trip with. There was so much heaviness and weight and so much at stake. And I know that that was all the stories that Matt had absorbed and taken in over the years.
Yeah, I would just piggyback on that too. Like when you're talking about like the characters or like in all those stories sort of living within us and in the story and being there, even though they weren't necessarily maybe on the screen. But the fact that it was sort of maybe like a curse and a blessing, but it was like, I would never want to take another 10 years to make a film because it was a long process. But having that 10 years of being immersed into the not just the community, but into the like a lot of the lives of the people that had opened up with to us or that we become very close to. We become very close to a lot of the people that we met very early on in 2012, 2013. And so, those stories where, somebody who's maybe researching for a project or a script, they might go collect some interviews and put it together. But for us, it was, 10 years of real, real built relationships and stories and trust. And, we also got to see, the 10-year growth of like so many of these people. You know, a story we may have collected in 2012 is not like that person is not the same person
Yeah.
today or, 10 years later. And so it really did give us, you know, an eye into like what that growth experience, that time period was like. Um, and so it really was like it allowed us to go so much deeper than I think anybody who just is going to spend a year or two writing a screenplay.
No, absolutely. And I want to dive into your character, Matt, Daryl Sparks, because obviously we talk about mental health and we talk about the reconnection and the rebuilding of relationships and stuff. And your character specifically kind of showcased the quiet agony of somebody going through life, and then ultimately, obviously, ending in you taking your own life in the movie. How how did that impact you um, individually when you read the script and you went through the final motions of acting that out and portraying Daryl throughout the movie? Um, what did you take away from that experience?
Well, I mean, with Daryl, I mean, yeah, I mean, as we know, a lot of people that are experiencing like a lot of traumas, they don't want to burden the people around them with it,
Yeah.
right? So they talk, and especially if somebody like Daryl, who, the people around him were really his priority, is like keeping them happy, trying to provide for his daughter, trying to make his wife happy, trying to be a good friend for Calvin. It's just like it's all about like trying to keep everyone smiling. And he's somebody who really leads with love. Um, and I think that like the takeaway from that was that like what we for so many people is like what we see what they're putting on is like it is maybe a mask or something, and it's like it's taking the time to go deeper and beyond that. And even we talk about there's the line in the movie where or the bit in the movie where the coach O says thank you for your service to Stephen or to Calvin, and he kind of scoffs at it and yeah, thank you for your service. And it's like, I think a lot of like this film has been about, like just going one step further and then just like ask, beyond just thank you, but it's like, how are you doing? Or how can we be support as civilians like us or the civilian community? Like, how can we go beyond just thank you? Because you never know what somebody's walking around with, right? And I mean, this almost sounds maybe cliche, but you just don't know what somebody's dealing or carrying with them. Um, and I think that Daryl is absolutely, perfect example of that because he doesn't wear it on his sleeve.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And that it's so evident, and you did a phenomenal job of kind of showcasing that on screen of that silent battle within oneself that's carrying a lot of weight around with them and trying to be that supportive network and showing a tough out exterior, but then obviously kind of falling apart on the inside. And, Steve, I kind of want to dive in Calvin as well, right? Obviously you were starting out in the movie very much outwardly aggressive, outwardly speaking out about kind of your trauma that you said, and you pushed a lot of people away through the story and stuff like that, the family members and stuff like that. And we see kind of this two different dichotomy between Daryl and Calvin in the story, right? The two friends, and through that, and take me through that and your experience walking through this and being able to film and portray Calvin on film.
Yeah, so I wanted to be really careful of like falling into a lot of the Hollywood tropes that we had seen in films, but we wouldn't have known what was and wasn't authentic unless we did this research. And once we started doing it, we're like, hey, that doesn't seem realistic when you'd watch other films in the genre, and why are they doing that? And that sort of thing. Because to us, it was much more subtle and nuanced. I mean, I wanted our characters to be as authentic as possible and without getting off on one, as did the setting. I said this on the Micro podcast when he was asking me,
Yeah.
because, Mike does dirty jobs, and he noticed that the pulp at the pulp factory was real. And I said, "Oh yeah, one false note and you're dead.
Mm.
Like your audience, you lose them."
Yeah.
And I wanted the authenticity in what we were doing, that those that know know. And so just getting into the dynamics of the character, as Matt said, as we got older, the characters got older, meaning like the years that it took to make the movie. In the original draft, Calvin didn't have kids, right? And as we got older, I'm a father now, but like as we got to that place, and then Daryl had kids, and one of the interesting things that we had seen was, and it was important in the depiction in our storytelling. I didn't want Calvin to be some broken drug addict or something, because he's not broken. He doesn't feel sorry for himself. There's fragments, but that wasn't going to be our story. I didn't want him to hear a loud bang and then jump and grab a pistol and all this kind of stuff that we've seen, because I thought it was much more interesting to take the sheepdog metaphor, which is, protecting the flock and confronting the wolf as the sheepdog. I felt like Calvin and Daryl did that in their service, and now back home, it's the flock is your family, and the wolf is at your door, and it's the battle of the soul. And so, it was so interesting that, like, originally my character was going to sort of eat his pain in some ways, where he's just not really leaving the house much. And my character was going to be overweight a bit. And through the stress of the filmmaking process and the financing, like, I had a really hard time. I had no appetite and a hard time, full disclosure, keeping food down. I was just a basket case the 6 months leading up to going to camera, and I had this conversation with Matt, and Matt, being who he is, trying to bring levity to it, was like, you know, I'm driving by a Carl's Jr. right now. Are you telling me to go through the drive-through and supersize it with a milkshake? And Matt, who had been defined so much by his physical appearance through many of the projects he had done, where, he's shirtless with a six pack or whatever, he jumped at this opportunity knowing that he had never had the chance to ever do this and have the time. So over the course of 5 months, Matt gained 47 pounds. Why this is important to share is because it changed everything about his performance changed. His breathing, the way he moves through a space, how you feel about yourself when you get up out of bed, you look at yourself, you get out of the shower in the mirror, whatever it is. And it was really interesting. I mean, there's a funny anecdote in here that if you look at the scene where I come over to the house and we're carving the pumpkins, when Matt wipes past the camera, his weight, as he walks by, it jiggles the camera, just walking on the old floorboard of this apartment. But we were willing to commit to it to that level because we wanted it to feel that none of us are movie stars, that these are real people, these are real characters, and that was important. And that was across the board. Like with even Virginia, I told my costume designer when we first started this, I said, everyone's clothing is to come off the rack from Salvation Army. I
Yeah.
said, don't buy new clothing and distress it and make it look old or worn or whatever. Just go. So she had a budget, even for Virginia Madsen's character, of less than $100 to go buy her 3 or 4 outfits. Because I felt like that would be realistic working at the
Yeah.
VA as a trainee. So, I mean, that was our approach. It was just trying to portray real people as that had been shown to us through our research.
Yeah, and I got to say, from my perspective, obviously, a lot of folks on this call have seen the movie themselves, and we'll get to their questions here in just a second. But I think it came across very authentic, and I felt every minute of this movie. And I want to get to a question that was presented in the chat here. It was James. It says, dealing with so much trauma can often lead to what you just described as having your own nightmares. So during this project, did you guys both seek mental health professionals to be able to vent and not just let's just get it out on camera? Like, did you have to, like, through the stories and through the years of putting these things together, and maybe even closer to the actual filming, did you yourselves have to seek help because of the weight of the stories that you carried? And maybe I don't want to dive into too
You
much
want to go?
personal,
No,
but
this is important to share. So, Matt, I'm willing to open up about this. I've never really talked about it, but do you want to go first?
Um, I suppose I can go first. Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot. I mean, even over the 14 years, and being so immersed. I mean, Stephen, like, definitely more so than even I. But yeah, it's it's a lot because you are holding or like carrying, or not carrying, but listening to a lot of people's traumas and experience. And then especially like I guess for me, like it was the heaviest going into shooting because there was the what's the obligation? Like the responsibility of getting it right. We didn't want to, like Steven said, deliver like a sort of inauthentic Hollywood version of what it was important to us that these performances or this story felt authentic. And then going into shooting, it was on top of like really living inside of it and then trying to like make the best film possible on top of it. It was certainly heavy. And there were many a times where, like Stephen and I would be back in the hotel at the end of the night. Um, and it took, yeah, venting. I mean, it was like, I mean, a lot of the venting to each other. Like, thank God we had each other through the experience because, after 14 years of friendship on top of it, like, made for that. But probably should have sought out professional therapy, help. But definitely, I don't know. A lot of it also came afterwards. It was like after rapping, and there was like a lot of phone calls that Steven and I had where it was like sort of like you didn't know what life just felt very, it was like life before Sheepdog, shooting Sheepdog, and then life after. Um, and it was, even when we shot that final scene in the pawn shop, or that was on the last day of shooting for me. And that experience of like saying goodbye to Daryl, but then also being able to sort of like release a lot of that trauma that had just been sort of like carrying through the 14 years or even just through the 20 something days of shooting. Being able to just let it go. And I don't even be able, but because you weren't necessarily just letting it all go. I don't know. This is, I don't really spoke much about this either. I'm sorry for not being so
Yeah.
articulate. But then when we shot, Steven's scene was also one of the last scenes when he's at the crossroads as he gets out of the truck. That drive back, like we were in his character Calvin's truck driving back from set, just him and I. And it was both like we were both in tears. It's just like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to even know that I can say a weight has been lifted. I don't know. It was a strange experience, but I don't know. I feel like Steven, you should talk because it is still like I feel like still processing 15 years
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
So I would say, um, look, this is really tricky for me because yeah, it was always on my radar to go to therapy for all of this, and I'll get into why. But you have to also understand, like, I can't sit in front of a therapist and share any of these stories. That's not what I signed up for. I can't do that. I was like sworn to secrecy. And so that makes it tricky, right? But just to tell you, like, where I realized I had to be really careful. So in my research, I never drank with veterans or mental health workers, or because I'm not your drinking buddy. I wanted you to respect me and know I'm going to respect the heck out of you. If you share your story, I'm going to treat it with the most reverence and respect because you deserve that. And but what happened was is that I started to find myself in year one becoming reclusive. I remember at the time dating a girl, and I remember I wasn't willing to have my back to the door of the restaurant. I was like vigilant, and she was just like, "Are you okay?" And I'm watching everybody's hands, how they're moving, and then I'm like, "I just want to go home. I just need to be home." And it's important to share this because people, on this journey, it's okay to not be okay, but I soothed with alcohol. I was up a lot of and late nights. I found myself walking down to 7-Eleven from my place where I was living in Hollywood to buy a pack of smokes at 2 in the morning, on a call with a Gold Star family member, getting those final phone calls. I stopped putting my phone on silence at night because I started getting phone calls from veterans that were I was their last phone call before they were going to take their life, and I was trying to talk them off the ledge. And God willing, I was successful in all of those cases. So it took on, and then it goes into your nightmares, and you kind of don't know how to handle it because you're not equipped for it. So I want to say that like it's not, you know, don't anyone ever do that, because what we're trying to say in our film is like, I want you to know that I did have a great support system. I might not have gone to therapy, but the veteran community that had taken in Matt and I, they and the Gold Star family members, they were our support team. They would always check in on us. They were our North Star, even when we wanted to quit. So there were times where like it was affecting our respective marriages, our, you know, even even our agents. My manager of 10 years gave me an ultimatum in 2012 that if I didn't stop working on this project, we had to part ways. And I had never had a relationship with somebody longer than in my own family of 10 years and felt so betrayed, but devastated, And so as we work ourselves all through this, this is why it's important for everyone listening. Like, we didn't do it alone. We did not do it alone. So though we were taking on this sort of like, as we talk about, folks have already addressed it, like trauma bonding, I had some of the most courageous men and women in all different fields looking out for us and checking in on us and saying things that I'm sorry, just your civilian friend was just not gonna know to say or do, or and that carried us through. And I do want to just share lastly, 100%. We wrapped on the film. We shot in Western Massachusetts, put all the wardrobe and props into a storage unit, Western Mass. Get on the road with my wife, drive back cross country with our dogs. I walk in back into my home in Los Angeles that I had not been back to in like 8 months because from filming and prep and all that. And I felt like I walked into somebody else's home. It was really strange walking in and looking around, and I felt this weight that had been lifted that I didn't know I was carrying. And I think a big part of that is it was cathartic. It was truly cathartic. It wasn't just, oh, we completed the mission, because what Matt left out was when George Rice in 2011 handed us that in memoriam band and said, "Don't let me down." We got back in the Prius, and I remember holding on to it. And we were thinking, we knew we bit off more than we could chew. And we were making a decision, do we go back to LA or stay the course? And in that moment, we decided to complete the mission or die trying.
Yeah.
And we carried on. And so that drive in the pickup truck, having just filmed at the crossroads, part of why we were in tears was because I don't think we truly understood the magnitude until you climb the mountain and touch the fire, which many people on this call certainly have. You don't know. And I think that cathartic of like, okay, here we are. So I just wanted to share that with you all.
No, I greatly appreciate that. It means a lot coming from your perspective and the stories that you were able to listen to and hear and the lives that you were able to touch. And I want to talk about that for a second because obviously after filming, after you've now put out and released this movie, of the stories and the individuals that you've talked to over the last 14, 15 years, building this project and showcasing and basically giving the voice to the voiceless, of those, have they seen the movie and what has been the response from those people?
Well, I'll talk directly about the folks that we've sat in front of. It's been profound. We were on the film festival circuit for about a year, and where we could, we would invite some of those folks that had shared their stories to be there with us. I'll share one specifically. Um, Harley Caps, who's a Marine veteran, um, a combat vet, and Harley would tell you this if he was here. He's very severe post-traumatic stress, and just a beautiful human being. And he shared some pretty heavy stuff with us when we met him 2011 in Minnesota, in the rural back roads. And he came to our screening at the Twin Cities Film Festival. And we were really nervous. He was nervous. We were nervous. He'd never seen it. It's been so many years. And at the end of the screening in front of a full auditorium, he stood up in tears and he said, you know, you guys nailed it. I wish I had this movie 15 years ago to show my family so they could understand why I am the way I am, but why they are the way they are. I wish I could show this to my ex-wife. I wish I had it to show it to her. And that meant the world to us because, when people ask us, like, what was the hardest thing on this journey? Of course, raising money, of course, staying the course, all the Hollywood pitfalls, the roadblocks that are unnecessarily put in front of you. but it was getting it right, truly. It was getting it right for the people that had given everything, who had willing to give their life for their country. And so, you know, I think that just starting with that, it's the response has been profound. I mean, George Rice recently, he just watched it the other night, I think on Amazon, and he reached out with the most beautiful message. I mean, I was in tears, and I shared it with Matt, and he shared a photo of us like when we were young punks in 2011 standing in front of our Prius with him, and then him now with his wife with this beautiful Texan sunset. And it was just a full circle moment to be like, you got it right, brother, man. Yeah, and just to hear that from the Mike Rowe podcast that or I mentioned him by name, that so many people had reached out to him and said, "Hey, you really got your hooks into those guys." Um, but it meant everything, and of course all the Gold Star families we met with. But I'll button the question with this: on a daily basis, I get messages, whether it's to Sheepdog or to me personally on social media, and it's nothing short of profound
Yeah.
when you hear these personal stories and how the film has touched somebody in a certain way, and the film is doing what you had only hoped and dreamed that it could do. Um, it's incredibly humbling, and I know it's mine and Matt's uh, greatest life's work. Like to be a part of that, to be a part of not just the community that trusted us with their stories, but then folks that are complete strangers that are just discovering our journey or discovering the film,
Yeah.
and we're just so grateful.
Yeah. What part of obviously the film is out now and a lot of great reviews from people that maybe aren't military vets that have seen it for the first time and now get a kind of a sense of really what's truly behind the curtain. I guess it were on military service. What part of this whole process and the release of the movie has kind of led to kind of a healing process as well, not just with yourselves but others that you've talked to?
Matt, do you want to take that?
No, you got it.
Okay. Well, look, when a group of Gold Star mothers show up to your screening in Annapolis and they're nervous and they're wearing the buttons of their deceased children and a t-shirt, and they show up, and after the screening and Q&A, for a moment you see the light return into their eyes because they feel seen and heard. That's extraordinary. To have Vietnam veterans stand up in tears in a full auditorium again, um, who after 50, 60 years finally feel seen and heard, um, that's extraordinary. And there's so many stories like that. And um, we did a screening in Dallas, Matt, that a couple weeks ago, and a Gold Star mother had reached out to me. Well, she hadn't been deemed a Gold Star mother yet, and we don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but her son, who had served in the Marines, had taken his life a year ago, almost to the date. And she reached out and said, "I saw your trailer, and we lost my son." And she gave me his backstory, his service, and went into her own living nightmare, which is like her and her husband had not left the house in a year. They're just shattered. And I went out on a whim, knowing how heavy our film is, but also hoping that folks can see the light at the end of that tunnel. And I invited her to be our personal guest at the screening. And she came, and to hold her and know that this was the first time she'd left her house but for groceries, to ever be, especially in a public setting with 300 other people. Many of Gold Star families that were in there that she also got to meet. And after the film, to see her smile through her tears and hold on to her and feeling seen and heard, but hoping that the film could potentially inspire and help other people. And she said something similar: "I wish my son had this film a year ago." And I think that, like, it'll take Matt and I years to fully unpack this. But I think that as long as the film is doing what it's intended to do, and as long as it's sparking that conversation and inspiring folks to either do the work or reach out to somebody you haven't spoken to, um, as lofty as this sounds, we started off saying if we could save a single life with this film. The opening weekend of the film in theaters, a veteran from upstate Michigan sent me a message that he had spent his last $12 on a piece of rope at a hardware store. And he went down to his local park to go through with no longer being with us. And in that moment, a friend called, an old friend had called his phone. And he answered it, and he was frustrated because it was stopping him from doing what he intended to do. The friend said, "Hey, come on over." He goes over to his friend's house, and his friend told him about Sheepdog and said, "We should go see it." And he wrote me, and he said, "I just came out of the theater at such and such a theater, upstate Michigan. Your film has saved my life." He said, "I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I want you to know." And he listed all the things that he had really connected with him.
Yeah.
And it was pretty profound to read that because we'd always hoped maybe some way, but how will you ever know,
Right.
right? How will you ever really know? And and I can't to this day really articulate how that felt other than just fill it full of gratitude. And I sent him a sheepdog hoodie and a hat and said, "Thank you so much for having the courage to share this, and let's stay in touch." And he sent me a video when it arrived, and he said, "I haven't been able to walk on the sidewalk with my head held this high and my chest out in so many years. I'm living in this thing," right? Joking that he would wear the hoodie every day. And I'm just saying to you that it is the small things. It's our humanity. It's our connectivity to all of us as a community and just caring, just giving a shit,
Yeah.
checking in on each other, listening.
Yeah.
Because that's where it all began, right? Was just listening, without prejudice.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, full circle.
No, absolutely. And Matt, I'm going to ask you one last question. I want to give some time for our students that are here on this call that have questions, that have seen the film for you. But Matt, obviously this film has been released. It's touched a lot of lives. Looking back and over your journey and collecting stories, and now obviously doing the screenings and for folks and listening to the feedback, what's one thing that you've taken away, but also that you could tell somebody, if you could tell anybody one thing about your experience with the film and the stories and stuff like that to this audience right here of transitioning service members and veterans, what would be? I know it's a lot of weight, but
Yeah.
what
I'm
is?
like, I want to hear this.
Oh, dang. Um, yeah, I mean, the biggest, it is sort of the message of the film is that you're not alone, right? I mean, to people listening here would be that you're not alone and that we are out there and we care. Um, and I think, yeah, that there are people out there that wake up every day and just want to help and be there and support and that care about our brothers and our sisters. Um, that's what I'd say to the people on this call. And then beyond that, I think this film is, like what I hope that people take that are maybe like the position that I was in when I first came onto this project in 2011 and was completely unaware of what was happening, is that I hope that we can start these conversations and dialogues and that people maybe go, "Oh, I had no idea that, men our heroes that are coming home from war are going through this and experiencing this, and how can I step up as a civilian and as an American to do more and to be a better support and to go beyond the thank you for your service and to ask how are you doing or how can I be involved?"
Yeah. No, I greatly appreciate it. Guys, if you guys have questions, please throw that hand up. I want to give you a shout out. That way you guys can ask your question. I see that first hand up. He's been messaging me this whole time, like, let me ask a question. But it's our very own CEO here, Seven Eagle Group, Tyler Grant. Go ahead, buddy.
Thanks, Matt. I've been itching, as you know, to get a chance to talk to these folks. First of all, I want to say thank you to you, Stephen, Matt, and Tom for connecting this, putting this all together, and on top of that, the 14 plus years that you all have dedicated of your lives to this mission. And I have a serious question, then I have a quick funny question, so we can lighten the mood a little bit because I caught myself getting a little emotional there for a minute as a combat vet myself. I the serious question was, it had to take an incredible amount of fortitude to chase after this mission for the last 14 years. Um, that's like almost the amount of time I spent in the military, literally. So thank you for your service, both of you. And what would you say to the folks on this call and the people that are watching this live or later on they watch this recording? How do we find the thing that gets us excited about what you guys did? Like, how do we find that passion in something to chase it the way you have?
Get out of your house. Literally start, put your shoes on, put your coat on, get some air in your lungs. Get out of your house and try to find a way to get into your community. Look, this is not preachy. I'm not wagging a finger as the civilian, like, hey, I got these bright ideas. I'm saying to you that like you acknowledged it, like, and thank you, but being of service to our community, to a community, that's the first thing, and I think finding that why, it's you have to be willing to explore, to be willing to fail. I want to share it really quickly, just so because I don't want anyone to ever think like we're these Hollywood movie stars that live in these, Hollywood Hills homes kind of stuff. And Matt and I formed a moving company, right? To fund the research. This is years ago. I got a pickup truck and we were mini moves. And we never said no to any handyman work, to anything. And this is in between like acting jobs and just and we were putting it, so there was nothing to us. We were like, that's how much we cared about it. We're like, this is what we got to do. When I talk about your why, like you guys were our why. It became a place of like, well, if we quit and don't see this through, how am I going to look any of those veterans in the face? Then you realize, well, they'd probably let you off the hook. They're not, you care more about it maybe than they do. It's a movie, you know what I mean?
Yep.
They would understand. And I think we really held on to that because I think every film that came out, we thought it was going to do it. I'm not going to name those films, but we thought it was going to be the film that got made before we did, and it was going to stick the landing, and there might be no need for ours. And every time, and Matt will tell you that we were like, "Ah!" You'd see the trailer, and you're like, ah, and then you'd go and see it, and you're like, ooh, that's couldn't be more different than what we're doing. But I think it's being open to that. I think there's so many simple things that if you haven't reached out to somebody that you served with, reach out to them. You never know on the other end that they're dying to hear from you. Um, and I think it's also like if you can become a part of, there's so many veteran service organizations across the country, so many great ones too, some not great ones, but you can find the great ones because other veterans will tell you which ones those are. And being a part of those communities, I always love being a part of Carry the Load at Rivershawn Park Memorial Weekend, and you you really bond and you're walking, doing your laps around, carrying a load. You meet so many other people, and there's so many different stories. So that would be sort of my take. I'd also say for the younger folks or anyone who hasn't utilized the GI Bill, do it. You've earned it. I know folks that have utilized it to do acting classes at Lee Strasberg, or have gone back to school for something they thought they would have gone to if they hadn't enlisted in the military, and they're kind of, maybe doing a degree in psychology, or it can be anything, going to a trade school, a tech school, and learning how to be an electrician, utilizing that GI Bill. But I would really encourage you to utilize it. Matt?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think you nailed it. It was like, yeah. But Tyler, you had a lighter question, yeah?
Yeah, here's the last question. It's just for Steven though, but well, it's sort of a two-parter, but it'll be a
I feel
quick
like
one.
it's going to be a white chicks question.
Nope, nope, nope. I don't even. That's not me.
Okay.
But
Gonna
it is
get
a
me to
little.
quote some lines. I'll do it for y'all.
No, I mean, maybe somebody else will want that. But I'm
Okay.
curious about the beard, man. One, how long did you have to carry it for, and what was it like carrying that thing around?
That was like, what was it? Almost a year growing that. It was wild. When Lily Cooper, who plays my wife in the film, it was scripted. I see you're still hiding. It broke me because that was a line I had written in there that I felt that I had seen, in veterans that had didn't know that that's what they were doing. Beards are awesome. I mean, anyone that has one knows they're great. It's lower maintenance for some, and you put a little beard oil in, or you go out the door. Um, but no, it changed how I felt and looked, and I remember we stayed at the Red Roof Inn while we were filming this, because just to remind you all, this is a low budget film, and I remember like getting out of bed one morning, 5 in the morning, getting ready to go to set, and looking at myself in the mirror, and I was probably 160 pounds, 165 pounds, with this beard, and just looking as I'm brushing my teeth, and not recognizing any part of me. Um, and that was interesting. And so it just takes on something else. But again, uh, we were trying to make this as authentic as possible, and a guy like Calvin would surely have a pretty badass beard like that. And it was
Yeah,
real. I assure you, I had to
I,
keep that thing in check.
I thought that was going to be the comic relief question, and then you tell me that I'm hiding.
No, that's
No, no.
okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tyler.
You're not hiding. Calvin was.
Calvin was. Thank you for those questions. Christopher, I see your hand up.
Hi. Well, thank you for being here. I was looking so forward to hearing from all of you. It's just I was at an appointment and it's kind of regrettable. I missed the majority of this, but I love the film and I think it resonates with many vets who feel like they're completely disconnected with people. So I guess my only question is for those who still feel like they're completely disconnected and feel like they can't reach out to anybody, especially for people that I know who are still looking for work. Well, I do you think I would have no trouble at all recommending this film?
Christopher, I think you broke up just a little bit at the end there.
Oh dear, sorry. I was wondering because I was like there was dead silence. I was wondering what is the best? Yeah, my internet connection's unstable. But for those who feel like they're completely disconnected, it's like, and I tell them this is a great film, you have to see it, but they don't feel compelled to. Should I just go ahead and drag them over and just show them this movie?
Yeah, to caveat on Christopher's what he just said, like I wanted my father to watch this movie, and he did time he served as well. And honestly, I told him exactly what it was about, the journey, right? My experience watching the film, and honestly, he couldn't. Like, it was one of those things when I told him about the film, he's like, I can't bring myself to watch that film. Maybe in time he will, but it is tough, right? Like, there's a lot of moments in that film you're like, ooh, that hit home. And I know for a lot of veterans and stuff like that, it can be hard to watch because you can start seeing yourself in the film represented by Calvin or Daryl or any number of characters in the film, and it could be tough. But for those individuals, what would you say for folks that maybe are a little bit apprehensive about watching Sheepdog for the first time?
On your own time, for sure. On your own time. Um, Look, I was worried about that, and about the heaviness of it, but I thought nothing that we did was gratuitous, which I'd seen in other films, especially with suicidal ideation and just, camera tricks and all that, and I just wasn't interested in that story. But if I didn't go to those places, I think I would have done a disservice to the stories that had been shared with us. And so I accept that. And um, we accept that as a team, that if it will be on everybody's own time. But I would just encourage, if anyone had hesitation, and I hope Matt, and Tom, you can share a link to anyone that screened through especially through the Fandango codes to write a review if they enjoyed the film. But read some of those comments, like from complete strangers across the country, folks that have served, folks that might have served various conflicts in different generations, mental health professionals, Gold Star families, and then civilians. And I would just say, Chris, I would just direct them to that to see like even the interaction on Facebook of the folks and how they're responding to it. And that might be a first step where it's not just your word, it's people, a community of folks
Yeah.
sharing, whether it's their grief stories or sharing how much the film helped them. We got a message, we get many of these messages, but a few days ago, uh, this military spouse reached out to us, and she had said that her and her husband, who he had served, he was a combat veteran, sat in silence for 15 minutes after watching it in their living room. And she said he got up and went out to the garage, and she heard him crying quite hysterically. And she's like, I'd like to think that it was a good cry that he had been holding on to for 10 years. And she said the following day, he was much more responsive and receptive to talk to her over a cup of coffee, over breakfast throughout their day. And I thought that was pretty profound. And I know that, look, that comes at a cost if you're willing to endure that. Maybe for some folks, they don't want to be triggered by anything. And so we understand that. So I would just say, on your own time. And the film, the head of VetTix, Steve Weintraub, who's a combat vet, he said to me something a few days ago. He said, Sheepdog is evergreen, Stephen. It will always be. And it meant a lot to me because that tells me, Chris, that if someone you suggest to watch the film watches it on their own time, it might be a year from now that they finally get to that point to be willing to. That's still an incredible thing. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir. I greatly appreciate it.
All right. Look, our founder's got his hand up next. Go ahead, Jordy.
Thank you, Matt. This is about almost our year anniversary, a few months shy, and I would say this has probably been the most impactful thing we've ever done. Mostly we're focused on career stuff, but this just added a whole other level. So Tom Swack, man, thank you for being such a great friend to us and quarterbacking this amazing event. I'd love to ask you guys, Matt and Steve. I think you inspired a lot of the people on the call today to maybe share their own stories. To maybe some of them want to work in Hollywood or in the industry, in whatever role that might be. Can you guys talk a little bit about your journeys? I'm sure they were, like you said, a roller coaster ride. But what advice would you give to some of the crew here?
Yeah, I think, I mean, like, no, I mean, like this, the filmmaking industry is definitely a hard one. But it's like Stephen was saying so much earlier, it's like if you find your why and you wake up and you're passionate about something, or you feel like there's purpose and something that's driving it, it makes it so much easier. And it makes it so when the pieces fall apart or you get knocked off at the horse, it makes it so much easier to get back up on it. So I think that really is it's finding your why, finding what drives you, what you're passionate about, what you'll be excited to wake up in the morning and get to work on, even when it sucks and even when it's hard. Um,
I think it's also, Matt, worth sharing too, like through our production company, Team Out Studios, we hired and trained 17 military veterans and 5 Gold Star family members in Sheepdog. And
yeah.
an interesting part, just for anybody that's interested in potentially getting into this field of work, what a lot of people don't realize is that like the Hollywood part of filmmaking, that happens so late. That's like the red carpet nonsense, right? The actual making of a movie is very blue collared. You're working with your hands, you're carrying C stands and sandbags and electrical cords, and it's not glamorous, I can assure you. And but what's amazing about it is that if you're able to put together a great crew, there's a great camaraderie. And so we had this experience where some of our veterans, we put them in an Airbnb, and I would check in with Sergeant Major, and he would tell me, "It's great, brother. We're just having chow at night after we wrap. We're all bullshitting." And and he missed that. He said, that's one of the things I didn't realize how much I missed from my service 27 years. And he had said after we'd wrapped just how much that meant to him and how healing that was. And so from that point, he started his own little chat room. It's like a podcast from his he calls it his man cave. And I thought that was really interesting. And we creating that environment, like even for the Gold Star family members to be together and to be a part of the storytelling process, is quite an incredible thing. And to be able to have, when you break for lunch and share people sharing stories and laughter and then making new relationships with people that all keep in touch, is pretty extraordinary. And I think for anyone that wants to get into it, um, there's there's so much work. You do not have to live in Hollywood. There's so many, look at the states that have the tax credits. That's where you want to go.
Yeah.
If you're Massachusetts, Texas, New Mexico,
Atlanta.
certainly Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's great advice for sure. Yeah, I know I know several of our students have professed their passion is getting into filmmaking or story writing and telling stories and stuff like that, and being on the more creative side. But I think a lot of your point is finding that community and getting
Yeah.
in touch with those and building relationships with those individuals.
Yeah.
But Diana, I see that hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And thank you, Stephen and Matt, for being here. I love the movie. I think we need more movies like this. And the next one should include female veterans, I think. Um,
Well, you did see how the note I ended the film on,
right.
her next patient. Yeah, that was important to do. But I have to tell you that a lot of the dialogue, especially the military spouse, and that came from a lot of female veterans from the female gaze that was shared with me, and it was important. I've had a lot of female veterans come up to me, even Vietnam veterans and nurses and of all different ages say that they saw that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. My question is to both of you, I guess. What truth does this film reveal to you? Since the message is for us veterans that we're not alone, what truth did it reveal to you?
Okay, wow. So let's talk about two things. I'll get the darker part out of the way. When we talk about how affected I was as the storyteller over the years, there were days I was pretty sure I wasn't going to be here any longer. And for anyone that's struggling with mental health, please understand, no, the whispers lie. And Matt can tell you this because he experienced some of these challenges with me, not him personally, but knowing that what I was going through. And so I say this because my truth was I was pretty close. And if it weren't for the community, there was only so much my wife could say. There was only so much anyone, but the community that reached out through that saved my life, truly. So I'm a living proof of that. And that's really important. And that's why I don't just sit here and preach to people of get connected in your community. No, it truly, as a civilian, it helped me. I think the second thing is, and this is more of an anecdote to share with you, but this is just something that I didn't really realize because people throw around the word hero so much, and it kind of sometimes makes me feel uncomfortable especially when politicians are like our heroes and doing this stuff. But let me tell you this. I told you that I lived with a veteran in his sister's attic in Pittsburgh. So picture me, 2011, dead of winter, December. And I told you I never drank with veterans. And after 2 weeks of working together, and this is where he really opened up, Sergeant Link, about the sheep pen. And it was a very intense 2 weeks. And I was with him for a month, but halfway through, I said, Brad, it was like a Friday night. I'm like, you want to go out for a beer? No work. Let's just walk away from it and just go out. So we go out to a local, dive bar. have a beer and I go to the bathroom and I come back and there's a group of people standing there and they had recognized me from a film that I had done and they wanted a photo. And I was like, yeah, yeah, of course, let's. And I remember looking at Brad and he had this sense of pride, like, yeah, my buddy, his new buddy, and people want to take a photo with him. And I was looking at him going, oh my God, if these people want a photo with me, if they knew his story and what he survived and how he commanded his men, I'd be chopped liver. And I remember standing there and going, he doesn't know. He has no idea of how extraordinary he is. And that was my truth. And I'm telling you, I saw that from the Dr. Consolino, who wasn't a doctor at the time, who inspired a lot of Virginia's character. When I first met her, she was a single mother. Certainly, as you know, you're working at the VA, you're not getting rich. And I remember like working with her for weeks and I remember driving her home one night to her like one bedroom apartment as a single mother and watching her walk into her apartment and just thinking, nobody knows this unsung hero. I mean, the folks that sit in front of her know her value, but how does nobody know this? That this woman is giving everything she has. She's got her little daughter in daycare so she can be your final protective line. And I think that that was certainly my truth in this experience. And it'll be something that I carry with me for the rest of my life. Somebody said it was probably white chicks. It was.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like trying to work. I'm like leading up to it's that's a heavy one. I've not had that one before. And I feel like this is going to be sitting with me for the rest of the day, if not the week. Like trying to what is I don't know. I don't honestly I don't know. I think I'm gonna have to sit on this one for a minute. But maybe the importance of community. Yeah, I know that Stephen said that, but like it certainly is, I mean, that's very much been a theme in my life over the past couple of years in general. So I mean, maybe yeah, the community. I don't know. But thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Matt.
No, that was a phenomenal question. I appreciate it, Diana. Tom, I see your hand up.
Guys, this has really been fascinating, and thank you again for your time in doing this. I really have two questions. Stephen, as you know, we've all seen movies, whether it's streaming or in the theater, where you get to the end of the film and it's like, oh, boy, it just let me down. And what I really appreciated about Sheepdog was that it didn't have the traditional Hollywood happy ending. To use it was the exact expression, Stephen. It instead showed a light at the end of the tunnel. So my question is, did you ever, as the writer, did you ever struggle with how you were going to end the film, or did you always have that in mind? And the second question is, I've been a huge fan of Vondi Curtis Hall going back to the 80s. Yeah, I just find him magnetic and intense on the screen. And I know that Virginia came from a Gold Star family and had those roots. How did you wind up getting Vondi to do the film?
So it's interesting. I wanted him from the start. When I saw there was a scene in the film Harriet that I believe his wife directed him in, where he was about to give a speech to the slaves, and he plays a priest, and he hadn't even spoken a word yet, and he was doing this thing where I think he has some sort of like sage or something in his hands. And it was like, as I was looking at his eyes, I jumped out of my seat and I was like, said to my wife, "Oh my God, there he is. That's Whitney. That's Whitney. Look at the soul of this man, the gravitas. This is
Yeah.
it." So when I first started conversations with him and he opened up to me about growing up in the Vietnam era in Detroit himself and how many friends had either been drafted or had volunteered and how many didn't come back, how many did come back with post-traumatic stress, how many of them were currently battling cancer from exposure to Agent Orange. Um, that was certainly, and look, my filmmaking style coming from the theater, I like to rehearse. Filmmaking is very expensive, and I'm not this like, let's wing it on the day. I like to like, just because there's always discovery and rehearsal. So we rehearsed the night before that front lawn scene between our characters, and I was floored. But what came out of that rehearsal, because he's so malleable and he's so committed, was I had originally scripted it that Calvin was the aggressor and grabs him, right? And as Vondi began to say the speech and come towards me and hey, and he felt, and I remember I was up against the wall in this dance studio that we were renting to rehearse in, and I was up against the wall and I go, put your hands on me, put your hands on me. And he did that, and I was like, that's the scene. And so the next day, that's what you got. And he was just tremendous. Virginia, I knew about I had met Virginia 20 years ago on the red carpet of the Critics' Choice Awards. She was there. I was there for Five People You Meet in Heaven. She was there for Sideways. And she was extraordinary in Sideways. And she had that beautiful speech on the fermentation process of a grape and how it turns to wine. So I always had in my mind it would be so great in our story that it's somebody who's a little older in their journey in life who's having to rediscover and go back to school. But I also knew just like the level of gravitas now that she would likely bring to the character, having lost her nephew, and then just recently her brother, who was the father of her nephew, and and it was extraordinary what she did, and with the character and how committed she was, and so that just giving you an idea about that, just in terms of the ending of the movie. I want folks to know, like, so it certainly is open to your interpretation, but I'll share my interpretation of what it was being at those crossroads. So yeah, I didn't want the conventional Hollywood ending. I thought it was very important for Virginia Madsen's character to say to mine when I'm looking down, when I'm saying goodbye to her, and I'm like, "What's this?" And she's like, "It's your schedule for when you come back, when the real work begins." Because I wanted folks to know that, like, for somebody that had anyone that can relate to Calvin's journey, that it is a lifelong journey and that you're not just healed and away you go. And to commit to that journey, it's a worthy journey. And to own that. And I thought that that's why it was also important in the art therapy scene with his wife that, he's thinking he's still got a shot with her and she had moved on years ago, right? And he was still kept playing catch up to that moment. And to know that that's okay too, because like I say, it is on your own time when you're ready to really embrace that. So towards the ending, I always thought it's part of it's an homage to Castaway with Tom Hanks. And I felt like similar to being trapped on a deserted island and not knowing how to get off it, Calvin was a prisoner of his own trauma. And I thought that the crossroads would serve as, when I show the sign like this many miles to Alaska, this many miles to Canada, to California or to Florida, Calvin never thought he had those options, right?
Mm.
And here he is on the open road with his duffel to go visit the men and women that he had served with or the families of. And my God, that's the courage that that takes to embark on that journey. And what a wonderful thing to have those options. There was an alternative ending, which I'll share with you, which I'm glad I did not do. But this is when you get that in the 2 years leading up to when we finally went to camera. I didn't know if that was enough. And I remember like the challenges that we were facing and like, oh, do we end it on a more punchier ending? And I'd seen this viral video of a Marine veteran that thwarted a robbery at a gas station. And many people probably know the video I'm talking about. He literally is standing there with a bag of chips and a soda and his truck keys in his hand. A guy comes in with, a firearm and he just like drops it and he's got the kid on the ground and it's like over like that. And I was like, that's the sheepdog right there. And so that was going to happen where Calvin goes from that crossroads scene. He goes to the gas station, and that happens, and he gets hit. And he sits down and he starts to do this thing where he begins to see his little daughter walking through the convenience store, the gas station towards him. And I kind of get shivers talking about it because I haven't really shared the details of this, and I was like, okay, well, that's what Hollywood would do, right? It's cool, it's interesting, but if I just took you on a 2 year journey, or sorry, a 2 hour journey in this film, and that's the feeling I'm leaving you with of uncertainty, does he live? Does he not? I would feel like I robbed my audience, and I wasn't willing to do that. And I'm so glad we didn't. And that's a testament to just trust your instincts. That's what we had to do all the way through. And I cut that out of the script long before we ever went to camera. But just to give you an idea, Tom, on the endings.
Thank you. I think you made the right decision.
Yeah, thank you.
Very powerful ending.
I will second that exactly as well, because I love kind of the openness of Calvin's journey at the end. And I think, kind of all the roads, all the options were kind of ahead of him in which direction he needed to go for himself to start repairing and living again, right? And I
Yeah.
loved how it ended because, again, all the roads were open. There was nobody else out there. It was his journey to take, and whatever step he made was going to be his choice, right? And I
Yeah.
love that ending of the film and how you portrayed that openness. Clay, I see your hand up.
Thanks, Matt. And Steve and Matt, this question is for both of you right now. It's 50 years from now, we're long gone and everything like that. What legacy do you want the movie and the story to be shown as? And what do you want people 50 years from now talking about when they see the movie and they see the story and they see everything that went into it?
Yeah, I hope that we will like people will look back and say that this film made a difference. I hope that people will say that there will be people that will look back and say, yeah, that movie saved my life, or yeah, that movie started a conversation, or a mother might say this, I was able to talk to my son after this movie. But I think, yeah, as far like a legacy of the movie, yeah, that this is, I mean, it would be a dream if this was one of the films that veterans for years like referenced as, one of their favorites, or one of the ones that I think that they recommend, that they continue to recommend, and that it will, like Stephen said, be an evergreen film.
Yeah, I would just to add to that, Clay. Look, I want to be so careful that I don't have my head over my skis. Um, someone, it might have been Sergeant Major Tilly, but somebody said to me privately, which I can share this. He said, "Have you ever thought that this could be generational? Like if you affect somebody's life right now that has kids in their 30s, and that might have, you saw the film, like even the gentleman that I shared in Michigan, and how that impacts their family and their kid, that dad saw this film and feels a certain way, or mom saw it and feels a certain way, and they kept him with us longer, and how that impacts the next generation. So if we're talking 50 years from now, my God, that would be the greatest hope. I think when you tell the truth, that's what's evergreen, right? Things change, trends change, music change, styles change, hairstyles change. I mean, all the stuff that, over the different decades, they come back, those same trends. But what is always sort of everlasting, I think, is the truth to somebody's experience. And if that transcends, then that's my hope, Clay, that 50 years from now, someone could look back on it. Somebody who served in OIF or OEF might be 80 and go, yeah, that was my experience, to show their grandkids.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I appreciate that. Great question, Clay. Bryce, one of the individuals I was definitely referencing when I mentioned folks on here that want to get into something a little bit more creative. Go ahead, Bryce.
Hello, hello. First and foremost, I would like to thank both of you guys, or all three of you guys, for showing up to today's meeting. That was very informative. That really did it really hit on a deeper level. Um, Being able to describe the film in such passion, intensity, and eagerness was also something that kind of caught me off guard. I connected to it on a different level for sure. Um, and my major question is, for someone trying to break into the industry, right? For someone coming out of the military, not as much experience in this field, right? Before I joined, I was in college for film, but trying to get back into it. What makes a person marketable in this day and age? I know AI is becoming even bigger. I'm currently in Montclair, New Jersey. I just found out that they're creating like a AI movie studios. I have no idea what that would look like, what the shape of the industry would look like, but what makes a person marketable? Like, what assets would a person like me need in order to really, you know, more so carve out sustainability?
Matt, do you mind if I hop in first?
Yeah, can I just ask though, Bryce, are you like looking in front of the camera or behind the camera?
That's what I was going to ask.
So so what I was studying originally was digital media. So it was behind the camera. But with that being said, my plan now, hopefully with my OJTs or with my on-the-job training, um, potentially be program coordinators with people who work in art districts out here, whether that's theater or short films, and then go back to school and then try to finish that degree. But within now or from now to 2029 when I should be done, I do plan on getting or not getting, but going to like improv classes, learning both sides, learning everything I can to just be a sponge in the industry.
That's great. I think out of the gate, you talk about what assets do you bring. You're already ahead of the game. How many times were you late in your service? How many times did you have long days and didn't complain about it? Because if you did, you're doing PT and getting burned out, right? How many times did you work in a group setting where you had to rely on the other folks and you're only as strong as your weakest link? So you're already ahead of the game, big time. And I saw that in so many of the veterans that we hired, that they were just, there is on-the-job training that is required. I mean, for any job. So I'd say that. The thing about AI, I want, just to share, it's not something to fear. Like you can't, that train left the station decades ago. It just surfaced in our modern conversation about it. And unfortunately, a lot of people were late to the game and the ones that weren't. So it's a tool, right? Now, if you were to ask me, would I ever write a screenplay with AI? Well, probably not at this point because it's not my voice. My voice is what you develop over years, right? Could it be a tool for, hey, in a scenario where two people walk into a bar and you type that in, would this outcome be, you could use it like that, right? But in terms of AI, like there was no CGI in Sheepdog, but understand that um, we could have like I'll give you an example. In the scene with Coach O, where we're driving in a car, we're actually in a cop car where we have cameras on trays on each side. It would have been probably easier to shoot it with it's called poor man's process, where you green screen it and you just rock the car in a studio stage. And I always felt that that looks just fake, and it does. I see it in Netflix shows, and I'm always like, oh my God. But people have gotten used to that. Um, but that when you do it, that is a form of you're using digital media, and it's not real. So it's finding out, I think it's learning the tools. It's like, do you want to be the person who's like arguing 20 years ago about the MP3, right? In Hollywood, I lived down the street from the Capitol Records building, which is now all condos. But there was a time where every single one of those offices were there because they were A&R reps, they were like tour managers, they were this, they were that. And for anyone to art, like the MP3 came and it changed all of that. And those that understood, like Steve Jobs, to go, let's put a jukebox in your hand. So you know this from your military service. What is it? It's adapting and overcoming. So I would just say, you know, learn those tools. Learn all of those tools because I don't have the answer in terms of what that AI stage could look like. Um, but learn all those tools, just like in instrumentation. Our score, right? I couldn't pay an orchestra in Poland or in New York $80,000, which is the average, to score the movie, right? We didn't have that budget, but I could pay our composers to use recordings that are in software that are actually humans playing it, but it's a sound catalog that anybody can access if they pay the software fee, and that's how it was composed, right? So it's utilizing those tools to be able to make something um, effectively and efficiently. If that helps you. But the other last thing I'll say really quickly, and Matt, you could talk to this. Get out there. Say yes to everything. Get on student films. Put yourself out there. Learn what you like, learn what you don't like, learn what interests you. You know, you could have aspirations to be behind the camera, let's say working with the technology like lenses or, you know, being in the camera department, and then have aspirations to be a writer, and you end up liking one more than the other and kind of find a knack for it. So just be open to that.
Yeah, that's basically where I was going to get at. It's like you have to just get out and start doing it. I think the fact that you're exploring so much is like the best thing that you could do. You're exploring like improv or it's in front of and behind the camera. That just makes you more valuable to anybody in it because you understand every role on a set, right? Um, and but just get like Steven said, like just start making movies, whether it is short films or independent films, or you can just get a job, you know, as a PA on a studio project or in on a series or something. I mean, in New York, I mean, it's just being on set and being around it is going to be the catalyst that's going to take you, and then being open to where the road does take you, right? You could get into it thinking you're going to do one thing, and then yes, it is you doors open and it's just saying yes and allowing the universe or God, whatever it is, to sort of like help guide that path. And it's just listening for the signs and following and saying yes. But just do it.
Yeah. Kind of like Calvin at the last scene, taking that first step, right, in the direction you want to go and pursuing it wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
I appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much for being. I do have, if someone else has another question, but I do have something that I've been thinking about this entire time. Obviously from the onset, 14 plus years ago, talking about these stories and listening in and bringing these stories with you to tell the story of Sheepdog and kind of interweaving and melding these stories together to produce something that was so impactful. Is there a sense and a mission after the movie for you guys? And what is that mission now?
It's funny,
My God, Matt.
but we were
Matt
kind of
also.
talked just the call before this, before we got on. It was like, what
I
is
That's what Matt and I just talked about.
it is
So yeah, I can just say in the interim is this. I've like started to accept like speaking engagements, and I'm not a public speaker. Making a film is very different. It's very intimate. You might have a camera right there, but it is not. I haven't done stage in 20 plus years, so it's very different being in front of a group of people. But to share our journey on this, I would be. We'll see how this goes, but I would explore that as an avenue. I think Matt and I are trying to figure this out because you know we we were able to hire and train veterans and Gold Star family members, but we don't have like funding until the next thing happens, right? And I wrote a heist script that's kind of like Hell or High Water meets Heat, that takes place in West Texas that I wrote over COVID, and I worked with the local LAPD because some of it takes place in LA, and I work with the Texas Ranger Department, and it's something I'm really proud of. Um, but I would never do it if it was like longer than 2 or 3 years of my life, especially being a new father. But I want my aspirations and mine and Matt's as a production company would be like, okay, how do we expand this program that we started? How do we find funding for that? And then how do we make this next thing work, which is obviously substantially more expensive when you're talking about action and firearms on a set and all that kind of stuff. But I think it's just to continue to do the work. I think that, it will take time for folks to discover this film, and that could open up doors to look at opportunities of how do we continue to share the mission and message probably. Matt, your thoughts?
yeah, no, I'm with you. It's like I think we both have accepted too that like this film will be one that we will be talking about and for years and years to come. And yes, would be so grateful if we were continuing to, host screenings, and be able to continue the conversation and it is our goal absolutely to continue the mission. But yeah, beyond that, yeah, like what do our next projects look like and what sort of like social impact or social like are we thinking about? Yeah.
Yeah, like Matt, I'm Matt Olson. I'm like next month in March, I'll be going down to Springfield. I was invited by the VA to go down and speak to a group of veterans, and That's very different than being a keynote speaker at a gala, you know? And I would explore those opportunities to hopefully have conversations like this that could be maybe helpful. I don't know.
Wow. No, and I appreciate it. And I think, I don't know if you knew it when it happened, like at the first conversation down in Texas, like if it came to a realization that when you accepted that from the veteran, that you were kind of accepting this mantle of things to tell and go forward and kind of not just through the movie, but even afterwards, right? Even after the movie. And did you kind of recognize it then, or is it something that kind of after the movie has come out, it's like, there's something here that we need to continue to do?
Yeah, I think we did recognize it, to be honest. I mean, we felt the weight of it.
Yeah.
And I think we didn't look. We never knew, as I said, it would take this long to get to the screen because we never took our foot off the gas pedal. But yeah, we like when you have this in memoriam band in your hand and he's telling you, I'm going to connect you with the family, that becomes a very different thing very quickly. It becomes very personal. Um, and I think that, yeah, but I would say that not in our wildest dreams did we ever, we hoped, but did we ever truly think that the film would have turned out this way?
Yeah.
That it could transcend, could find an audience that was responding to it in the way it did. Um, every time we've done film festival screenings or even screenings around the countries for veterans, we both get stage fright. We're both nervous. I feel sick to my stomach. You're like, it's a new audience, it's new people that are seeing it. How are they going to react? There's no assurance that it's going to be anything, right? Because everybody has a different life story.
Right.
So I think that from that moment in South Texas to now is that this has exceeded our wildest dreams.
Wow. I want to get to the last two questions with Clay and Bryce here. And again, I want to say thank you so much, Matt and Stephen. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for what you've done through the movie. Thank you for what the voices you were able to share in the story. But Clay, go ahead.
Matt, I first of all, it's just kind of rung in my bell. Going back to your time when you were on like Kyle XY to here, did you ever sit there and envision yourself being a part of a project like this whatsoever? Or was this just something like you were just so drawn to it, like here it is? Because it's kind of remarkable to see your progression through all this. And here you are now with this amazing piece. Did you ever imagine that when even, you were there with, doing Entourage and stuff like that, when you were in that one little thing? Did you
Yeah.
ever envision yourself being in a part of something like this?
Yeah, I am, I don't, I always like dream, like when I theater, like growing, like leading up to Kyle SY, like I was always very much like gravitated towards, I don't want to call them more character roles, but like I showed up to Hollywood and they were trying to put me in, especially, during the Kyle XY time of like, I don't know how to say this. That's like feeling like a total cheeseball, but like, like the hot guy at school or whatever in high school or whatever. And so like I actually hated those when I would get sent those auditions. I hated it. I was like, that is just like not what I do. It's not who I am. I don't feel connected to that. So it was always like I feel like in my head, my aspirations to be able to get to play roles that felt a little like more carved out, or even maybe further from who I was as a human, or as a person. So maybe yes, but not quite to this extent. Never did I think that I was gonna have a film that would be as sort of meaningful to either me or people like this, to be able to create something that has so much meaning or impact. I mean, it's just like beyond anything that I could have ever dreamt of. At the time I knew that, you know, art and movies and storytelling was meant like was very much like, yes, I love that it was about connection and connecting to people and telling stories and starting conversations and all of that. But this is like beyond anything that I ever could have imagined. And I'm just so grateful to be here today, to have had the past 14 years, 15 years, and to be sitting here with all of you today has been like, yes, it is more than anything I ever dreamt, I would say, yeah.
I do want to say congratulations. I mean, really breaking away and getting away from that typecasting to something like this. It's inspiring for sure. So thank you.
Thank you, Clay.
All right. Great question, Clay. Bryce.
I am a man of many questions. I know I'm on a time crunch right now, but to start, I genuinely really appreciate you guys for coming. I value your perspective. I value you guys' time, everything. With that being said, I was wondering if there is a chance that we can take this from an e-introduction or e-meeting to potentially being able to connect in some way, shape, or form. As I know you guys are going to be leaving shortly, but I would love to get more guidance, kind of pick your guys' brains apart on the industry and just go from there.
Sure. I'll put my email address in the chat right now, as long as nobody solicits me for
But also,
and
Bryce, are you on Instagram or like that's
yeah.
usually the best way to like connect with me? If you like hit me up on Instagram.
Wait, you're saying LinkedIn isn't the thing that y'all use?
I'm
That everyone is harping
Yeah,
on at
no,
Seven Eagle?
you know, it's so
Whoa,
interesting.
Bryce.
We're learning like the older generation is on Facebook, like our parents. Younger, well,
yeah.
TikTok kind of blew my mind that it's multi-generational. I thought it was just kids, but our trailer went viral, and some of the people that were leaving comments, I'm like, those are not teenagers. So we're learning, but you can access anyway. But yeah, I think Bryce, we're here for you. Anything that you need on in James, like any questions, any guidance that we can give. I think someone just wrote, please get my mom off Facebook. Yeah, I think everybody went through that the last couple of years. Um, but we're here for you guys. If you have any questions on anything, and um, you know, just let us know.
Wow. No, I appreciate that, guys. Thank you so much. And Bryce, great question. I love you taking that
Love
take
it.
that step. That was
Yeah.
awesome. I appreciate that. But again, guys, thank you so much. I know we've spent the last 2 hours together, and honestly, I felt like it even hasn't been 2 hours. I appreciate the genuine conversation and the questions from everybody, and just your insights on the amazing story that you were able to tell through Sheepdog over the last 15 years and bring it to the screen, and again allow us to be a part of that and see it and experience it for some of us that have been in the military for a long time and seen the other side, maybe the darker side of combat and military service. But I think this definitely opens the eyes of individuals that aren't connected with the military as well. And I truly appreciate that side of it, because oftentimes they don't get to hear that side of military because they see the explosions and the heroics and all these other things. And every single person that wears a uniform is human and goes through struggles. And oftentimes they don't talk about it. And I appreciate you putting out that message and get connected with community and a support network to help people along the way. So thank you so much, Stephen and Matt. Thank you so much for your time. I greatly appreciate it. And like I said, always welcome back here at Seven Eagle Academy. And I appreciate you guys lending a hand to any of those that reach out to you.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it. If we could share this with everybody, we're so grateful for you all to take the time to watch the film. That was through Fandango, Matt Olson, correct?
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
did it
great.
through Fandango.
Wonderful. They were a great partner, and we're so glad that we were able to do that. It really helps us. Like I've been interacting with some of the folks here just in the private chats, and like if you did enjoy the film or it connected with you in some way, please leave an audience review on Rotten Tomatoes or Letterboxd or IMDb or wherever you may have account, Fandango. It does really help because like we had talked earlier on this conversation about, well, when Chris had asked, how do I get somebody that might be resistant to seeing it? it just adding your human experience of how maybe the film you were able to relate with it is really important. And those reviews do mean a lot because it helps the algorithm to help the film trend so people can actually find it that didn't even know they were looking for it. But also your shared experience has so much value. So again, you can also find us on all of our social media. We're very interactive on Instagram and Facebook. Our website's sheepdogthemovie.com. Very interactive there. But yeah, those audience reviews on any of those platforms mean the world to us, and we'd be incredibly grateful. Thank you.
No, thank you guys. Thank you again. But I gotta let you go. Like I said, I don't want to keep you. We could talk all day about this, but I know you guys got things to go do, and I again greatly appreciate your time with us.
Hey, I hope we can do this again. If you arrange something in the next couple months, we're here.
Let's do it. I appreciate it.
All right,
Thanks, Frank.
everyone.
So much.
Thank
God
you.
bless you all. We're very grateful. Keep fighting the good fight, and just know how much you all mean to us. God bless you. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Great job, Matt. Way to go.
Wow, that was,
awesome.
I tell you what, I didn't, you know what? I came into this conversation not knowing if we were going to get through 2 hours of conversation, but honestly, I felt like that breeze through it, and their openness to talk about their experience and share some of the stories and insights on the creation of this movie was absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
And I appreciate them taking the time out of their day to do that for you guys and give you that insight. And hopefully, Bryce, it works out for you, getting that contact and stuff like that. But again, I think they genuinely do mean and they care about this because they got to see the other side of the military, right? And both of them not being military themselves. I know that Stephen talked about his grandfather and stuff like that being a POW in World War II, but now they are a part of our community, right? And they have the experience and they've seen it and they've heard about it. And I think that that's really powerful to be connected to us and having that family on the military side. So yeah, fantastic, guys. Thanks so much for asking those questions.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you guys found a lot of insights, and those that have not watched the movie or taken advantage of that voucher that you guys that I sent out to you, please go watch it. It is truly an inspiring story from Calvin to Daryl to all the people involved.
And if you guys could also, if we could just leave a bunch of reviews for them on what IMBD and Tomato, what I don't know.
Rotten Tomatoes. That's
Yeah.
the big one.
But just do that'll be a nice thing. They gave us 100 free codes to go watch the movie, so that cost them a few grand. So that would mean a lot to us to boost them up and get some more views. But thank you guys, Matt Olson. Thank you, buddy, for doing this. That was awesome. And we'll see you guys all tomorrow.
Hold on one second. Yeah,
Jordy,
let's.
Can you shut the live streaming service off and make either
Yes.
Matt or me host? We're gonna stick around for a little bit and chat for anybody that wants some extra time, wants to talk. I know I'm gonna stick around. I think maybe Matt will too. I know some of you didn't get a chance to ask questions because we didn't have a lot of time, but we're definitely willing to stick around and chat for a little while if y'all want to. So y'all are free to go today. Make sure you complete your end of day